It's the BWI Live Postgame Show, the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Like all great games, and that was a great game, there's so many different places we could start. We could start with the Penn State defense and what happened. We can get into that because there's some pretty definitive things that happened in this game. To the Penn State defense, some self-inflicted and some things that you just can't stop if you're the Nittany Lions, or at least they didn't have the answer for in this game. But the Penn State offense, putting up 37 points in this game, I know the way it ended feels bad. But if there's one thing you've wanted all season long, it's for the Nittany Lions to feel like they could win in a big game. And they felt like they could win that game the entire time. I know it was hanging on to a train that's going 95 miles an hour, but they held on all the way to the very end. And then, of course, they couldn't get it done, unfortunately. There's a lot of different things to say. I thought Drew Aller was great in this game. Dylan Gabriel was better. The Penn State defense didn't have an answer for Tez Johnson because they didn't have an answer to stopping the Oregon ground game. 183 yards in the game, 4.3 yards per carry. They got a lid on it at one point, but they couldn't find the balance. They couldn't take one thing away, and so both things happened. But as always, I want to know what you feel about this game because there's got to be a lot of feelings out there in the chat about the situation Penn State found themselves in at the end of the game, the officiating, everything. Everything happened in this game. All of the talking points that you could have about a football game all happened at once, and Penn State falls 45-37 to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Greg starts us off. He says, disappointed? Yes, speed kills. 500-plus yards, total offense. Statistical dead heat. So proud of them for not giving up. I think that's a big thing. Not that they have given up at any point this year, but coming into this game, we have said they have found a lot of ways to win in a lot of different situations. The number 3 team, I think it was in the nation at that point, they lose to them by 7 points. The number 1 team in the nation, they lose by 7 points while scoring 37. If you had told me Penn State gets a 37 in this game, I would have told you, oh, wow. So they're the number 1 seed? But no. Penn State racks up 518 total yards in the game. Turnovers were a big story. And I hate to put it here, but Drew Aller throws an interception on a bad ball in the first half, leading to an extra possession for Oregon, on which they convert for a touchdown. It's a 7-point decision, and there's 7 points. Obviously, at the end of the game, that's what you wanted, Penn State fans. That's a 50-50 ball to his number 1 receiver, to Trey Wallace. I think, because we're doing this live, like I didn't get a chance to really watch that. Fairly certain that was the same coverage they got all night. And they, Aller put the ball out in front, and Trey Wallace didn't get position. Now, he tried to go over the top. The ball was too far inside. Neither player made the right play there. But that's not entirely on the quarterback by that. Crypto Ducat says, why should Tom Allen be the defensive coordinator next year? They owned the second quarter and got Penn State back into the game. I know that's not what anyone wants to hear. This Oregon team is really fast. I don't know if you noticed that. One of the things that Oregon did early in the game that kind of set the tone is that they used Penn State's tendencies and athleticism against them up front on the defensive line to then spring their athletes into space against Penn State's less athletic secondary than Oregon. So Penn State's defense is very athletic. Oregon is more athletic. The pedigree is there from the players they've recruited and brought into that program. They're the fastest team on the field 99.5% of the time that they're on the field. So instead of running their traditional outside zone, they did a lot of short pulls, a lot of quick pin and pulls. So Abdul Carter and Zane Durant are Penn State's 2 best defensive linemen consistently at stopping the run and getting into the backfield. They both like to win with athleticism and cheat back against zone blocking. Generally, Penn State uses that slant against zone blocking to get into the backfield, get free runs. Oregon knew that. They had the scouting report, so they just blocked them back. Instead of doing what they would normally do, they just trapped Penn State's athletes on the backside, and then that sprung the runners out into the field. After they established, hey, they're going to run the football, and they can, because it's not just that. They also ran the ball in traditional sets, downhill, old school gap blocking, and they sprung some big plays. Penn State has to bring on Dom DeLuca onto the field, have 3 linebackers. Suddenly, you're playing the run with a bunch of players in the box, and Tez Johnson is really fast, and he is alone in space against corners, safeties, and linebackers. So on one play, they're running RPOs. Basically, they spam the RPO after they got the run game going. So this is not complicated. This is just the basics of football in modern college football. They didn't do anything. Andy Kotelnicki earned his money. And I'm not saying that the offensive coordinator for Oregon didn't, but he has to do less to get more. So they run RPOs, and you have one of the most electric players in football alone in space against Abdul Carter in a zone, against Zion Tracy, or against Zakee Wheatley in space. And his catch and run ability was a difference maker. Now, Penn State did the same thing early in the game with Tyler Warren, where they were able to get him into space in the same RPO situation. The difference is one of them runs a 4.3, and the other one runs a 4.6 because he's a tight end. No disrespect to Tyler Warren, but this is what we've been saying for a while about, receivers are important. The Penn State offensive line deserves a lot of credit for the way they played in this game. They controlled the line of scrimmage against the team. Watching the film, both myself and Landon Tengwall had a conversation about this defensive front. They frustrated and stopped and stymied and were really good against Michigan and Ohio State. They controlled games down the stretch, and Penn State took it to them. That was the matchup that we thought, okay, that Penn State's going to lose that. Drew Aller's going to have to scramble. No, the defensive line was what we had it flipped. We had it flipped because Oregon came in with a really good game plan all the way into the fourth quarter. The stop that Penn State's defense got at the end of the game, they adjusted to what Oregon was doing and outflanked them and made Oregon cut back and get trapped in the backfield for that fourth down stop. So schematic back and forth. Why should Tom Allen be the defensive coordinator next year? He's been very good. I understand the anger of the moment. You have to understand how fast that team is. That's why I asked the question. When you got that much speed and that much size, what do you do to stop it? Because they bring all that size and strength and run game, and Noah Whittingham and Jordan James are really good running backs. And they break tackles, and they're fast, and they can cut back, and they're explosive. So you have to dedicate something to stop that. You get into a no-win situation, which is what an offense, that's what you're trying to do. And on defense, you're trying to stop the game up front with your defensive line and then flood the secondary with coverage players. And on offense, you're trying to find one avenue to dominate so that the defense overcompensates. And that's largely what happened in this game. And just terrible communication in the beginning of the game. Penn State was not ready on the first drive. They gave up the edge twice from defensive decisions more so than they got beat at any point. So you can lose a game early, and Penn State got out to a slow start, a field goal compared to 2 touchdown drives, and Penn State was behind the rest of the game. And when it's a perfect analogy, right? The other team is an elite sprinter, and you didn't get out of the blocks well. Now, you made up some distance in the middle of the run, but they closed, right? They had that closing speed to win the 100-meter dash. But I didn't think Penn State was going to be running that race. I didn't think that Penn State was going to be able to be in the game if that game script played out. Very impressed with the way the Penn State offense played. Nick Singleton looked amazing. Katron Allen was suddenly Katron Allen again. There's a lot of stuff to get to in that. And Drew Aller running the football, some of the scheme stuff that I love. That's what I'm focused on. I thought they just did a brilliant job on offense. And on defense, they got enough stops to put the ball in the offense's hands to win the game. And then you came up, you were not, when Penn State had to go full throttle, open it up, everything you've been asking for, they just didn't have enough. David says, Drew played with moxie, but didn't play well enough. Missed too many throws, including an obvious touchdown to Tyler Warren, and then 2 interceptions were just bad. Offense looked its best, though, to carry that into the playoffs. Agreed. Yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's difficult to say that the reason that you're in the game is also the reason you lost the game, but that's kind of how that played out. That's how this played out tonight. 2 costly mistakes. One, to give them the points to get ahead. If Drew Aller doesn't throw the interception in the first half, they go into halftime tied. Now, ifs and buts, right? Like, does Oregon do something different? Do they do different things in terms of how they play the game in order to make up for that deficit, or however they would be playing at that point? Or, does everything play out exactly as it is minus an interception? If you just insert a punt and then everything changes, except that's not how reality works, right? Casimir Kelly says, Penn State not making big plays when it counts against big-time opponents. What else is new? I don't know how you can't be. I mean, I know how you can, because you don't want to be. You don't want to appreciate the step they took in this game. But at the same time, yeah, I guess in the end, you're right. That's true. I feel like you're just kind of dunking on a 2-foot rim. It feels like, it's like, what? I don't know. I don't personally feel like they played poorly in this game. Did they come up small? Yes. Will you finally admit that the lack of holding calls and officiating was atrocious? Why does Penn State media not buck up like Ohio State? So this happens. Crypto Cod's a regular here. The accusation you're throwing at me, go check my Twitter timeline. It was very obvious that they were missing calls. It was very obvious that they were doing things that were incorrect. And I pointed that out. Pointed that a lot of times in this particular game. So I get that you're upset. Literally shooting the messenger in this situation. Not literally. Come on, Thomas Frank. That is hyperbole. Figuratively shooting the messenger here. Yes, they were terrible. Like, there were calls that were missed. Now, the thing is, I'm focusing on the Penn State plays. I don't know what the other plays that were missed on the other side. However, when you have an offensive lineman 5 yards down the field and you score a touchdown and nobody reviews it, there was a lack of urgency to do anything other than be on the field and run the clock. Like, shepherd from play to play for the officials. Venga Ioane's helmet had to come off of his head in order for them to call anything. So it says, horrible officiating. Without that, we win. Props to Oregon. I disagree. The way that was playing out, I don't know that Penn State wins without those calls. Now, you take a touchdown off the board for Oregon. Do they go and drive again? Like, now we're getting into the potentialities of what happens if you just take out one play that ends at a touchdown, ends that drive. Do they drive and score a touchdown? How does that change the fabric of the game? I do think that it is material to the outcome that Oregon was on the beneficiary side of a lot of calls. That's the second time in 2 big games this year the officiating has determined the game that was played. And this happens all the time. Like, this is the point of, and I think it's funny that Crypto Ducat is like calling out the Penn State media, because during the game against Ohio State, when we said, hey, they're allowing everyone to hold, then it's Penn State's receivers are just trash and you need to get open. How dare you not get open? And now it's, the officiating is the reason, because you almost won the game. It was so close. I get it. I absolutely get the frustration. Let's go to Chris M. Offense looks solid against an elite team. This isn't Franklin's fault. Game could have gone either way. Time for playoffs. Also, blank the refs. You know, I thought this was a well-managed game. I'm not your game clock management guy. If you're coming to me for game clock management, I opened up telling you about the schemes and the back and forth of what I saw. I'm not here for adjudicating clock management because I just don't pay attention to that. You guys are great at that. So you don't even need me for it. The game plan itself on offense specifically was very good. Defensively, I don't know what the game plan was. Truthfully, I don't know because it was eviscerated so quickly. Oregon was on the offensive and Penn State was on the defensive quite often. And a part of that is when they did get good plays, Dylan Gabriel escaped, extended the play, and now you have Tez Johnson in space. And that's when a lot of things really fell apart for Penn State. But one of those was on RPO where you had a receiver or an offensive lineman 4.5 yards down the field. Lots of people upset with the officiating. Avery, average Jack Archery. The missed review to Evans to me, okay. Let's talk about Penn State's game plan. If you want to know, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm not trying to be like, I told you so. Friday, I put out a list of things that I've seen Penn State use previously that I thought could work in this game. Now, the caveat is I was totally wrong in the fact that I thought they couldn't run the football in this game, and they ran for almost 300 yards. The outside zone worked. I figured that's what they would try and go to get those big guys running. I didn't think that the interior of the offensive line was going to play as well as they did. And Nolan Rucci, wow, he played awesome. But they were able to do a lot of things that they've done all year in order to get explosive plays on offense. And one of those things is tempo. So Oregon likes to run quarters. They run 4 deep players, or they run man coverage primarily. Those are the two things they primarily play. They throw in enough cover 3, which is a deep safety and 2 deep corners typically, but 3 deep defenders anyway, however you want to slice that pie. That's their base defense. And Penn State's very good at attacking quarters specifically. Andy Kotelnicki came from the Big 12. He had a lot of experience of moving those safeties around and making sure that they all are wrong. And so they were able to get tempo and then attack. 2 of their touchdowns came on plays where they were first running a play, getting into tempo, and then getting an explosive shot. So there is a problem when you run tempo and your coordinator in the box doesn't get the signal that we don't want to go fast now. And that miscommunication can't happen. But if Penn State burns a timeout to stop that from happening, because again, James Franklin doesn't call the offense. He's not in control of that communication line. So if he calls a timeout, then he has one last timeout in the second half when he absolutely needs it. So what are the odds here? You need to get them to review it, but they kept sitting on their hands and looking around like, we're not going to review any of these plays. So, it's a tough spot to be in, but Penn State's coaching there and Franklin getting them to review that there, that has to happen. They have to review that play. There has to be an awareness from the top down, from Kotelnicki down, Franklin down, that can't happen. That was a catch. That was 10 yards. That was a first down they needed. And time on the clock. This is the Labatt Postgame Show, as you can notice by my swanky quarter zip. Actually, this is like a half zip. Like, it goes halfway down. I was actually, if they won the game, I was going to come out like maybe shirtless, excited for you guys. But as it is, we are professionally zipped up here. The Labatt Postgame Show, when it's time to kick back and watch the game, grab a Pilsner that's as pristine as Happy Valley itself. Labatt Blue and Labatt Blue Light deliver unmatched taste that goes down smooth every single time. It is winter now in Happy Valley. It's winter in the Northeast. Grab a Canadian beer that was brewed for the cold, that's ready for a home playoff game at Beaver Stadium, which is where this train is headed. If you think they are anything less than the 5th seed, You didn't watch that football game. That's one of the most complete teams in college football, and they went toe-to-toe with them. They're going to get a home game. They better be the 5th seed. They better be playing Arizona State, which is what everyone's expecting coming into this game. We'll get to that in 1 second. With your tailgating next weekend, or you're just watching on the couch, Labatt Blue and Labatt Blue Light are your go-to for unbeatable drinkability. Bleed blue and white. Drink blue and light. And if you're coming into town, W.R. Hickey, 1321 East College Avenue in State College. You can check out W.R. Hickey Institution here. Good old W.R. Hickey. I bought beer there before. You can buy beer there. You get your Labatt Blue. Please drink responsibly. Labatt, USA, Buffalo, New York. Contractually, and I mean that actually literally, I have to get to a defensive player of the game. Yeah, defensive player of the game. Let's get to this part because this part's easy. Defensive player of the game is brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClanahan of McClanahan Law Firm. Matt is a Penn State super fan. We text on game days all the time. He's been a fan for over 2 decades. The reason he's supporting this show is because he's a fan of Penn State football. He watched the show. We met up this summer. I said, hey, I got this postgame show. You want to be a part of it? He's like, yeah. He's all about the game. He'll be at the postseason game. He's been at every game this season. If you ever need his services, mattmlaw.com to check him out. I'm going to go with Dom DeLuca as our defensive player of the game. Couple of timely stops, couple tackles for loss. He was not bad at football today. Again, I need to go back and need to watch the film. I don't know how relevant it's going to be when by 4 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to be talking about who Penn State's playing next, and everyone wants to know about those things. So I'm probably going to be shuffling some things around at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Again, put a pin in that thought. We'll get to it in 1 second. But DeLuca, I thought, was good in this game. And give some love to Deni Dennis Sutton. I thought his run defense was good. There were a couple of times he let Dylan Gabriel out of the pocket. He had a couple plays he could have made. There were some plays where I was watching Deni Dennis Sutton run somebody down from the backside or Zane Durant run somebody down from the backside, and they missed. They don't miss those during the whole season. Only against this team do they miss some of those tackles. If you're just joining us, and there's a lot of people here, hello, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. This is the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Please like this video. Subscribe to bluewhiteillustrated.com if you want to. But the YouTube channel, it's free. And we're here to talk to you. We're going to be live tomorrow on Sunday to talk to you about the bowl situation, where they're going to be hosting the game, and that sets them on a trajectory to what bowl they're going to be going to. So now it's time to start thinking about your travel arrangements, because Penn State fans went to the championship game, but if you've seen Big Ten championship games, that thing sold out normally. Everyone's waiting for the bowl games, right? Penn State's not out of the hunt for a college football playoff. This was just the appetizer. You need to make your arrangements in advance for the playoff. The quarterfinals held on New Year's at the major bowl destinations: Pasadena, Phoenix, New Orleans, and Atlanta. Collegiate Athletic Travel is the place you want to go. Catch the playoff action with an all-inclusive bowl game travel package brought to you by Collegiate Athletic Travel, a national leader in sports fan travel. For over 50 years, these guys know how to do this. They know the bowl destinations. They know the people that drive the caddies, and they know the people that drive the shuttles, and they know the people that clean the rooms. They'll get you the best possible experience. Your State College-based go-to company, a companion for Penn State bowl trips. Air-inclusive packages feature round-trip air transportation from select Pennsylvania cities, deluxe hotel accommodations, airport and game transfers, pregame meal and entertainment events. They take care of the food for you, as well as game tickets, all under the eye of Collegiate Athletic Travel's seasoned event staff, always on hand to make your bowl game travel memorable and carefree. And for those of you traveling to the bowl game on your own, you can still get the land package, which is everything but the airfare. So go to athletictravel.com, and I'm going to put a link to there in the description of this video, or call 814-238-4987. Super excited to have Collegiate Athletic Travel with us. You're going to be hearing a lot about them in the next couple of weeks because Penn State is likely going to get a home game, a favorable playoff seed. They have a track to go to the bowl game. And I'm telling you, pay for an experience that's worth having. And there's nothing more worth having than you worrying about whether Tom Allen's a good defensive coordinator, not about whether or not you know where your shuttle is and you've got to be the dad planning the entire trip. Let somebody else take care of that. Collegiate Athletic Travel can do that for you. Getting back to your thoughts here, and I'm going to keep up with you guys as best as I can. We do have to get to some of the other things here on the show, but the chat is hot tonight. How on earth was that the best officiating crew in the Big Ten? Embarrassed for the conference. Extremely proud of Rucci tonight. Thought he stepped up. Thanks, TF. Absolutely, Jamie. I agree with you. Nolan Rucci has done so much work this year to improve. From a technical standpoint, I was worried for him when he first stepped on the field this year. This game, I am now optimistic about Penn State's tackle situation for the foreseeable future. He needs to get bigger and stronger. That's a no doubt. But he's gotten there from a positional standpoint. He's balanced. He's using his leverage. He's using his length and his athleticism. He's not ducking his head. He's not reaching. This is what I was trying to say all week. And this is the problem with the internet is you say something and then 1,000 people show up and say that that's not correct. And I'm like, I think it's correct, guys. Oh no, Oregon's got elite pass rushers. Yes, they're very good pass rushers. Derek Harmon's the best pass rusher, and he got home a couple times, and Drew Aller just made him miss. But the edge rushers for Oregon are not overwhelming monsters. They're powerful, and Rucci struggles most with speed when you get him off balance. When he's on balance, he plays like he did today. And there were a couple of times, especially on some of those outside zones, he's dominating. He's a strong run blocker. He played his best game that he's played of his entire career tonight. Because I was going to say of the season as a Nittany Lion, all those qualifiers, this is where he's played most of his football. So that was absolutely excellent. Showtime is back. Love Showtime. He says defense with the problem. Both halves. 45 points is unacceptable. The 2-point try is why. So let's talk about that. You're not going to like this conversation if you don't like the idea anyway, right? So I don't know why I'm doing this, but in that situation, Penn State had just scored to get within, I think, a touchdown at that point. I forget the exact math. I apologize. But if you don't get it, you're down 8 was kind of the point. And that's where they were the whole time. It didn't materially affect the game because they kept needing to get touchdowns as opposed to they were in the margins of they didn't force Oregon to kick a field goal in the second half to get closer and like have those percentage points. But the point is you were down and they were scoring a lot. So in that situation, when you have time to make up for it if you miss, you don't wait until the last second to try and win the game. You try and win the game as early as possible. That is the theory. That is the math. Now, not so early that you're skewing the entire game flow by doing it in the first quarter, right? That's the extreme of like you go for 2 every single time. But strategically, if you've been down 11 points, 14 points, and you pull within a score, if you can, in the margins, get there, then you try that. Because let's say Penn State scores and now suddenly it's now they're tied, right? And it goes to overtime. This is not benefiting you if you're Penn State. Had they gotten it, and obviously this is the if, right? So if it works, they have the ball and the chance to win with 2 minutes left because you made that decision first. Now it didn't work, so you're boned. But you're not because you can still go for 2 later. Now, that was the caveat of that final drive is they still had to score on the 2-point conversion to force overtime. So it does put you in a position where you have to go for 2 twice. But Penn State was the underdog. Their defense was playing in a way that's making everybody mad. And so the offense needed to score more points, and there are only so many possessions in the game. So you try to find the points where you can find them. You kicked a field goal early. That's the idea. You may not like it. I know you don't like it. I can just feel the chat burning. At the same time, that is the why. 45 points from the defense being unacceptable. Yes, 7 of those came from the offense. And Oregon is insanely fast. This is not Big Ten football at the top is not like Big Ten football in the middle. It's a good conference. They have good defenses. This is a good defense that played poorly. They did not play with good discipline, and the other team had a very good plan. Okay, Crypto Ducat, he and I are cool. I apologize. I don't know if it's a he or she. Crypto Ducat and I are cool. But I know how you're feeling because like in these situations, always very mad. A. Campbell, lots of good, lots of bad, and ugly. Would like to know why we had 3 rushing attempts in the first 21 minutes. Battled Oregon, but good. We were also outcoached. I don't understand the outcoached part. Defensively, I understand that things didn't go well. But I don't know. Again, this is also, I need to go back and watch the defensive adjustments and then what happened because Penn State held Oregon at critical points to 3 and outs. Let me go back and look at this right now. This is important. This is important. Against really good teams, you're not keeping them to 17 points. They forced 3 and outs in the game. Importantly, 2 in the second quarter, where they allowed that touchdown drive to start. And after that touchdown drive, they allowed 65 yards, which for this game is actually really great in this situation. But they had a 3 and out, a 1-play touchdown drive after the interception, and then a 3 and out. So they fueled the comeback. And then at the end of the game, they got to stop to give the team a chance to win. And then the offense threw an interception, giving up a possession. Penn State gave up 2 possessions in this game via turnover. Turnovers, explosive plays. James Franklin says it all the time. The defense has to do enough in the game. The offense has to do enough in the game. The defense got no turnovers. The offense gave it up twice. Penn State loses by 7. It's as simple as that. So from an out-coached perspective, I feel like the offense was in the game and the defense made enough timely adjustments that they were able to give the ball back to the offense. I think Oregon has better players, guys. And that's also a hard fact that's a really hard truth to absorb, that you gave them your best shot and they won by 7 and had the ball at the end. To the part of 3 rushing attempts in the first half, I think Penn State's also surprised that they were able to run the ball in this game. The game plan, yes, A. Campbell, I agree. They came out and threw the ball all over the yard. I loved it. They were aggressive, up-tempo. It was a totally different offense. That is not the offense of ball control and meticulous carefulness. They knew they had to open it up. And that brings me to Drew Aller. So they have to throw the ball all over the field, right? And then the run game starts to go, but there's a moment where it started to kind of slag, right? They started to get a little in the mire. And then Drew Aller started keeping the ball. Those plays where he almost ran for a first down, fell over at the sticks, and then the touchdown run, there is no difference on that run than any other play they've called this year. They've called that play maybe 20 times this year, maybe 10, I don't know, a bunch. This is the first time Drew Aller ran the football on those options. That is the Andy Kotelnicki offense that you saw with Drew Aller. That is the full, unadulterated, wide open, our quarterback's going to get hit. Who gives a damn? I want to start swearing. I'm all fired up. I really want to start swearing. He committed to this game. And personally, I'm very proud to watch that happen because he let it all on the field. There was no tentativeness from Drew Aller. Now, did he miss some touchdowns? Yeah. Did he miss some throws down the sideline that ended the game? Yeah. But you wanted Drew Aller to open it up. I wanted Drew Aller to open it up. I wanted him to keep throwing. And that's what happened in this game. And that's why they were in this game. Because what Penn State got done to its defense, Penn State did to a very good defense. So we need to appreciate the fact that this is a good team. And Drew Aller is a good quarterback. He also threw 2 interceptions. I'm just going to keep saying the facts because I'm also working through it. I don't know how to assess that game because they don't win without him and they don't win because of him. And so I think these are positive things in a growth mindset, but winning the game is the most important thing, and they didn't do that. So it's a tough evaluation for me. But the running and his part of the run game opened up the offense for Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, along with the way the offensive line was able to block. Also, Jamari Caldwell, I think, is number 90. He is a very good run stuffer if you don't ask him to move. Penn State asked him to move. There's a little bit of blood in the water, too. I want also this to be understood that Penn State made the number 1 team in the country, the no-doubter. We were coming to this game saying this is the most complete team that we've seen Penn State face this year. They made them bleed. So everyone knows, hey, is there a game plan? Is there a blueprint here? If you make that Oregon defense, those big body guys run laterally, is that a way to score points on them? Does somebody else take this and then succeed? We always talk about teams doing that to Penn State. Penn State may have done that. Andy Kotelnicki may have done that in this game. And so I don't know what it means for the future. I don't know what it means for Penn State in the playoffs. If Drew Aller plays like this, 95% of this maybe? This season is far from over. Michael says, keep it close despite injuries, talent differential, dumb penalties, slow start, lousy officiating, needed a clean game and didn't execute. Michael, you're absolutely right. They did not play a clean game and they needed to. They needed to play a perfectly clean game and they didn't. From the penalties to the turnovers, that's the story of the game, Michael. You absolutely nailed it. Oregon played a clean game. Dylan Gabriel, as much as I'm saying, like, Drew Aller was awesome. Dylan Gabriel extending plays, his ability to keep his eyes downfield. Oregon, here's my thing that I'm always frustrated watching this. I can't believe we're almost 40 minutes into the show. I feel like we're just getting started. That offense frustrates me. I don't love wide receiver screens because they're a harder throw than you would think for the quarterback. And when the defense can read it, it's a negative play. Now, they have athletes. They want to put them in space. They want the numbers. Penn State adjusted to that and started taking away those wide receiver screens. That opened up the middle of the field, Crypto Ducat. I don't understand why they were letting the middle of the field shots. They were trying to stop the run. They were sucked into the line of scrimmage. The ball went over their head because that's what an RPO is. It's a run-pass option, so the linebackers are attacking that. Secondarily, Dylan Gabriel got out of the pocket and extended plays and threw the ball down the field. The Audavian Collins play where there's an obvious offensive pass interference with a full arm extension that isn't called against a 170-pound defensive back and a 250-pound tight end. That's also why they got open over the middle of the field. Ted says, I see 5 to 6 Penn State made mistakes that were the difference, but why are we repeatedly swimming upstream against an officiating bias? Why do we not have to? What do we have to do to get holding calls? I don't know. It's hard to do this show and blame it all on the refs. It's hard to sit here and make that the thing, but it is a thing for sure. 2 things. Penn State has less talent in both of those situations, right? Ohio State, Oregon. Generally and specifically in certain matchups, they have less talent. So they can't afford the attrition. And this is the part I was trying to say earlier is I don't know, because I'm watching the Penn State players trying to understand that. I'm not looking for, hey, Abdul Carter had his hands in the face of somebody and nobody called that either, right? I'm not looking for what happened to the Oregon defense. Were they getting held on those plays? It didn't look like it. Like, I was watching the offensive line. I didn't see a lot of holding from Penn State, but at the same time, there could be stuff that I just missed. There have been plays where Nick Dawkins has tackled a dude and Omari Evans gets a touchdown and nobody wasn't called on the play. So I don't want it to be that it's an officiating bias. I don't love buying into the conspiracy theories, but it kind of feels like it. Kind of does. When you have the higher ranked team, both at Penn State's home stadium and at a neutral site. And it just happens that all the calls go one way. All of the bad luck goes one way. You do make your own luck, right? In a certain situation. But that's where I have to leave it. Oregon didn't need. Well, that's not true because they scored a touchdown off of one. I don't know. It's a hard conversation. I don't want to talk in circles about it either because there's a lot of things. There's not a faster team we will face, says Brett. If you told me we were going to lose, this is by far the most encouraging way to lose. I have faith in the defense. They can pair O and D. Look out. I hope that that's the case because we've been waiting for the potential of all of this stuff to kind of come together, right? The offense and the defense. The offense needed to do it. Just go. Just go. Get out of your own way at times. And it felt like that. Now they need to find a way to dial in Drew Aller, right? Because I want Drew Aller who's running and throwing, but he's just a little too fast at times. Just a little too sped up. And then he makes plays where he's got a dude hanging off of him for a touchdown on 4th down to extend the game. Dude is awesome. He is so talented. And you need to channel that and not lose that. Because here's the other thing. This isn't Sean Clifford interceptions. These are not Sean Clifford decisions. They're inaccurate passes, but they're not bad decisions. And that's the frustrating thing is it's so close. It's so close because if he plays like the quarterback he played at the best of those throws tonight, he's the better quarterback because he can do more. But 6-year quarterback that plays confident, free, and loose, and the quarterback that, oh, buddy, does he want it? We unleashed something in Drew Aller this year. So if they can get that, the balance of the rage and the calm, he's going to be tough to stop someday. Trey showed up today, says David. Greater offense needs to replicate this for a few more weeks. T. Frank, why was Jay Reed so bad today? Speed in space. So let's talk about this offense or this defense, right? Here was the game plan coming into the year. Jalen Reed was going to play the lion position. The lion position is a linebacker spot. That should tell you something about his skill set. KJ Winston is I'm going to be conservative here, 4.4 athlete, in the 4.4s. Maybe low 4.4s, maybe mid 4.4s. Having that speed out there would have helped. Now, again, that happened in September. It's not like saying, oh, if only. But it changes the structure of the defense. So now Jalen Reed isn't playing primarily in underneath coverage. Now he's playing in deep coverage. Or he's playing that apex position where he's playing both. In middle spaces, in the run game, in deep coverage. But he's not playing linebacker light. Because he was still going to play safety. He's still going to play in deep coverage. But you could have helped him out in a game like this if KJ Winston is healthy. They did not have that option. So he was put in situations where now he's stressed athletically. Mental mistakes start to happen. This is my best guess, by the way. This is just me spitballing because you asked me a question. And I know we're saying the other thing you do is why was Jay Reed so bad today? Yeah, he was bad. And that's the end of the conversation. I want to try and give you something for your time here. And, they have really great athletes, and Penn State's athletes are really good. And that difference, Oregon exploited and hammered at that. The problem in my mind from their perspective is they just don't do it enough. The fact that they throw so many freaking screens drives me nuts. Can Matt Emlaw also be the defensive coordinator as well as a lawyer? Whenever one side of the ball, we were firing Andy Kolnicki in the middle of the season, and everyone was like, yeah, Tom Allen's fine. He's not Manny Diaz, but he's fine. And now it's fire Tom Allen. Maybe. Penn State is now in the realm where you might get what you want. We're in this is the big boy realm. This is top 3 game showdown, college football playoff on the line. So, yeah, maybe at the end of the season, this is a conversation that they have. Continuity is very important, but you also want to have your best at all times. And I don't know. I need to go watch the defense. The defensive game plan is always harder for me if it isn't apparent immediately. And it just because of what Oregon was doing, it was a little bit difficult to understand the game plan. From generally what are they trying to do? Here's the problem. Penn State has had a game plan all year. It's called man up. They play press man coverage and they take the receivers out of the game. They could not do that in this game, so it had to be selective. So what coverages were they running? How was it being exploited? They had to play cover 3 a lot. I can tell you that because they had to add bodies into the run game. So now you've got fewer players deep. These are decisions that Tom Allen was forced into because that's how football works. That's what he needs to do to stop the immediate threat that's happening to him, which was getting gashed in the run game. Sheldon says Penn State didn't have the stigma against Oregon, and the game was better for it. Penn State has a chance for a rematch, both losses. Any thought on rematches? It did feel like they didn't play tight, right? Like the offense didn't feel like, oh, that's Ohio State. I want to punch them so hard. And they just played football. Sheldon, I think you make a good point. I'd be interested to see what it would be like a rematch with Ohio State now, given their offensive line situation. Seeing them once, I think if Penn State like this came out and Ohio State like they played at the end of the season, and those two teams matched, ooh, that's a good game. I don't want to outright pick Penn State, but you'd feel pretty good. Because here's another thing. James Franklin talked about this on Wednesday, having to chip defensive ends, having to bring in extra blockers. And they did a lot of big formations, extra tight ends and running backs blocking with only 3 receivers in a pass pattern. They did a lot of that tonight, but they also didn't. They also were able to block those players with just the 5 offensive linemen. I think the more confident they get in that front unit and the more times they play like that, the more dangerous this team will become. And I'm not trying to set you up for some false hopes for the playoffs. I'm just very encouraged about the way they played against a genuinely good defense. C. Paul King is back. He says, so pissed at the calls on offense, the lack of adjustments on defense. Okay, so don't like that last play. I need to review that play. But based on what I saw, that was a decision by Aller. I don't know the full play. We're focusing on one route of that play. That might have been a situation where it's like, if you've got it, take it. And every other time, Aller's checked it down for the first down. Again, we had to go live. I had to do a bunch of different things. I didn't get a chance to review that final play, so I apologize. I don't have a more comprehensive context of that. But what I saw was they were in quarters, and it was a one-on-one to the outside of Trey Wallace, because when you run enough players deep, defenses like that just turn into man coverage. Now, I might be wrong about the coverage, but I know it was one-on-one to the outside. And Wallace didn't win deep, and Aller didn't put it in a place that only Wallace could catch it. And then we have to talk about the decision to throw that football in that situation, because I think that's also part of the conversation where like, players have agency. It's not Madden where you call a play and then you press the triangle or the X button and then the quarterback throws to X. The quarterback has agency. There's a progression. He chose to throw that football, and I respect the fact that he chose to throw that football. He wanted to win the bleeping game. He believed in himself, and he threw the ball. And I respect the team that wants to go down swinging. Now, was the execution good? No. Was it the right look? I don't know. Like, I have to go back, like I said, and look. But I don't think we can just call that play calling. The rest of it, like, we'll see, right? We'll see how all of that plays out in the coming weeks. But Penn State fans are decidedly a fan base that expects the other team to not score a lot of points. And when you get into a modern college football game, into a shootout, sometimes these things happen. And it is not good, obviously. But am I looking at this right? Oregon scored 14 points in the second half. Now, it felt like a lot more than that, for sure. They scored 14 points in the second half? That's a great defensive adjustment. I'm sorry that it took me 51 minutes to look over and realize, because the game flow felt like, right, it's a tidal wave. They scored 14 points in the second half. They scored 30-something in the first because Penn State wasn't able to adjust quickly to their game plan. Yes, I understand that. But defensive adjustments, in-game abilities, all those things, like, I'm not buying that he's a total disappointment. They didn't play well. The defense got. Fire Tom Allen. I mean, I know this is an emotional response. This is an emotional postgame show. I just don't feel that from this game when you were able to get the ball back with a chance to win. A. Campbell says 3 rushes in the first 21 minutes. And again, I'm going back to the point of, I don't think Penn State thought they could run the ball against Oregon. I'm fairly confident they didn't think they could run the ball, especially between the tackles, against Oregon. I think the first time they ran the ball wasn't Bo Prabula on the field, and it was Tyler Warren took a snap, and they were trying to do everything they could to manufacture run yardage. And then it turned out in the second half, once they started just running outside zone, they got them running. So they adapted the game plan. The game plan was that defensive front averages 280 across the board or something like that. It might even be higher. So let's not beat our head on a brick wall. They have not been able to run against teams that have good defensive tackles. Minnesota, good defensive tackles, couldn't run the ball for a damn. Ohio State, good defensive tackles, couldn't run the ball for a damn. For a damn. That sounds awful. Cursing would be so easy right now. So they decided to come out and throw the football with their 6'5", 5-star quarterback. I respect the decision. It is a retroactive feeling to then say, oh, we can run the ball. Let's run the ball. And then they just hammered it. And then it's to say, well, they didn't at the beginning. Because there is a feeling out process in the game to understand what's going to work, what's not going to work. And sometimes things work and you're not expecting it. So I understand the frustrations, but I just want to if I can guide your frustrations to the right spots, I feel like I'm doing my job. But I don't feel any frustrations because I thought that team was going to win decidedly, and Penn State fought tooth and nail to make this a honorable defeat. I don't know. I know that is hollow and everyone hates that. Central PA, literally the county, is donating to the show. And hopefully we're donating back to you, Central PA. Please, when you come to the playoff game, visit local establishments. We have a lot of them that have been on the show. And I just want to thank all of our sponsors for the year. And you know, if you come into town, make sure you buy local and you are supporting Central PA like they're supporting us. And I know that's not literally Central Pennsylvania, but it's fun to imagine it is. Zach, he's asking, is it deliberate? No. This is the problem. This is the responsibility I feel. Because Zach is at least asking the question, is it deliberate? No, there's no cabal out there trying to get Oregon the number 1 seed. It feels that way, right? When you're on the wrong end of a bunch of blown calls, it feels like they're out to get you. But I don't like conspiracy theories because while some people find them fun, then everyone believes them. And then we're in this weird post-fact reality where I can't say that officiating isn't rigging the game so the number 1 seed stays with Oregon because then I'm part of the machine or something. I don't know. I don't even know how the logic flows. I'm not valuable enough to be bought by anybody to lie to you. And so, like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a dark rabbit hole to go down. I don't know why you think that the Penn State's going to be 8th, Nathan. This was what I was afraid to ask last week. Texas lost to SMU. I'm not following this. We're going to be 8th is what he says. I don't, Nathan, I feel like that's fear-based. Oregon's the number 1 team in the country by every metric. And Penn State played really well in this game despite the bad start. I don't know how any college football playoff committee could look at this performance and go, that was terrible. That's 8th. They played better than pretty much every other. Can you imagine like any of the teams that played in the conference championships that you watched recently? Any of them doing a better job than Penn State? Because that's what you would be saying. Like, oh, yeah, well, Notre Dame would have definitely beat Oregon. I don't know about that. I don't know that they wouldn't have. I don't know that they would have, but I don't know they would have done better or worse than Penn State by an appreciable margin. Justin Ziegler. Holy jeez, Justin. $50 donation. Appreciate you. By the way, everyone listening on the podcast, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this conversation on your end. You can leave comments on the podcast. You can like, rate, review, all that stuff. That's very helpful to help us grow that side of everything. Biggest issue I found was Penn State let Oregon determine the pace of the game. Yes, Penn State kept it close, but we've seen over the years they struggled in track meets. They scored, but Oregon got enough stops. Also, Franklin's coaching. Penn State also got enough stops. Oregon controlled the pace of the game. Yes. How do you propose that they stopped that? As I laid it out. And if you're joining us late, I'm just going to recap this quickly. We're getting to the end of the show, and I could go so much longer. You guys have been awesome. Super engaged. I appreciate. These have been really thoughtful comments. We can disagree, but I do think that you guys have a great pulse on all this stuff, and I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you supporting the Blue White Illustrated efforts as we are here at 12:48 at night on December 8th. This is we've crossed over into the day where we're going to find out Penn State's college football fate. Oregon came out with a good game plan. They used Penn State's defensive athleticism against them, trapping them on the backside of runs when Penn State was expecting zone, and they got pin and pull. Is as basic as I can say. That might mean nothing to you. Oregon then got their athletes in space. Penn State combated that eventually by not doing the things that they always do and playing a little more standard. There's the traditional guys blow some gaps. Kobe King blew some gaps. Tony Rojas blew some gaps. Abdul Carter was out of position a couple of times. Denai Dennis Sutton gave up an edge here and there. And there's just a leak against the run. They didn't get dominant penetrating wins into the backfield because the Oregon offensive line is good. It's a good offensive line. So what Penn State normally does, the way they normally control the game with quickness and athleticism, was taken away from them, and they allowed 14 points. So they had to pivot. And they found a way to get into a position to get the ball back to the offense multiple times. The offense gave the ball to Oregon at the 1-yard line in the second quarter. Otherwise, Penn State gave up, what would it be? 10 points in that quarter, and then 7, and then 7. I mean, it's the difference in the game in that literal exchange. They were not their normal dominant self because they were playing the number one team in the nation. And so they came into the game knowing that. By the game plan that they had on offense, they knew they could not stop Oregon. Because Oregon, James Franklin said it before the game, you're going to get hit in the mouth. So you got to get back up and you got to keep fighting. And both sides of the ball did that. They just didn't have enough. And so I don't know why this is James Franklin's coaching. Because they lost the game, it's why it's James Franklin's coaching. I get it. But I'm trying to explain and understand and give you my view of the decision making of the game plan as it played out initially and as it evolved. And I think Penn State adapted on defense to get key stops. And on offense, they came out with a game plan where we're going to throw haymakers. Drew Aller came out looking for blood. He got some of his own blood, but he got a lot of theirs. And I don't feel the same way that you guys do about James Franklin because I don't have this decade of anger and resentment. This is not the Ohio State game where they were thoroughly outfoxed. That's what happened in the Ohio State game where Andy Kotelnicki had a game plan and Jim Knowles completely anticipated where the ball was going the majority of the time. That's not this game. But I appreciate the frustration and I appreciate the fact that in the biggest moments they didn't come through. And if you're the coach is always a responsible person, James Franklin will probably agree with you. I'm not going to stand in your way. Like I'm not here to defend and be a meat shield for James Franklin. He makes a lot of money. That's what does it for him. Don says, bummer we lost, but I thought the offense looked its best it's all year. Penalties and turnovers were what won it for Oregon. Don, I agree with you on a lot of accounts. I also want to give Oregon credit for putting Penn State in a position to make some of those penalties, right? One of the reasons Tony Rojas is reaching from the maw to grab a face mask is because the running back cut back and found an open hole. So like pressure forces mistakes, and Oregon put a lot of pressure on the Penn State defense. Crypto Ducat, man, you've been here all night. He says, despite my negativity, seems like the national media is changing their narrative about Penn State, and that's not a bad thing, especially if Penn State gets the number 5 seed. I don't know what the national media is saying because obviously I've been here talking to you guys, but they better, right? Penn State has not been blown up by a team, right? Penn State lost this game. They lost a game against Ohio State. Both those teams were top 5 teams. Penn State lost to 2 top 5 teams. I can't change those facts. You're mad if you're mad about those facts, and I'm not saying you are specifically Crypto Ducat. I'm just saying if you are mad about that and you want to go same old story, fire Franklin, all that stuff, none of the narrative has changed. But the feeling should have changed in this game. This felt like 2016 Penn State. This felt like 2017 Penn State. The teams that were wide open and fun and ballsy, and they just didn't care. I want more of that. I want this quarterback playing like that more often. And I don't want to have him go into a shell because of 2 interceptions that lost this game. I want him to learn from that. And I want him to use that. And this is me speaking as somebody who's watched Drew since he was a junior in high school and somebody who appreciates his ability to play the position. I want him to channel all of that and become a better quarterback from it. But I don't want to see the tentativeness of this offense that we've seen previously in other iterations, because I think it can be more. And so if we get to a position where Penn State fans are angry about like every loss and every loss in the way it was played is bad, I think that's bad process by us on this side that gives a negative feedback to what I think should be a positive feeling, which I think a lot of you do feel. And we always end up talking to a very minority group of the loudest, angriest people because they participate a lot on the internet. So we're over our time. There's a lot of stuff. Let me see if I can get through a lot of this quickly. Carl King, not C. Paul King. It's a bad ball given the situation. 292 yards rushing in the can, 8.3 average, 2nd and 1. Andy Kotelnicki outcoaches himself way too often. I try to describe this. If you want to check it out, rewind the show. We covered that. Every play has options, and the quarterback can choose those options. So to say Andy Kotelnicki is to blame without understanding the full context, which I don't have for you right now, I can't say you're wrong, but I also can't say that's correct. Also, it's your opinion. It can be correct, right? Like, yeah, that's not important. Game started horribly, says Ted. They fought through to the end. Take that as a positive outcome. And then I think that's where we're going to leave it. So there's a lot of stuff for you at bluewhiteillustrated.com if you want to check it out. $1 for 7 days to get in, try out what we have. And then if you want to, you can stay for the full freight for a year. We want to give you this week, which is a big week, to try everything out, see all the things that we have, our premium content, the best stuff that you can find. I'm very proud of the work that we do at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Very proud of my coworkers, Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder, Greg Pickle, and Nate Bauer are the best. Those dudes are awesome. They do a great job, and they're good people. So if you want to come join us on the Blue White Illustrated message board so we can yell some more, because my battery's about to die and, it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning, we can keep doing this tomorrow once I've gotten like 4 hours of sleep, right? But before you go, James Franklin's press conference on our YouTube channel. You're going to want to hear what James Franklin has to say, and you're going to want to know about all those things. And of course, instant analysis from those guys. That's all coming up here on the YouTube channel. You can watch it tomorrow morning if you need to pass out and go to bed. We're going to keep working, have great stuff for you at the site, and of course, have stuff for you here on the YouTube channel. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. You have been amazing, and we will be back tomorrow. Live reaction show. Once again, a live reaction show after we find out Penn State's seating and everything. And Nathan says, I agree with your logic. He doesn't trust the committee. The good news is, Nathan, if we go to bed now, when we wake up, Christmas morning is at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whenever they decide the TV show to announce it. We're not that far away, right? We're less than 12 hours away from finding out the logic of the committee. They've liked Penn State this whole time. So I guess that's my last thing is the committee has liked Penn State quite a bit. So if that is any indication and they've played their best game of the year, I think they'll be 5th. That's just my opinion. I'm Thomas Frank Carr.